This week on Africa Weekly, we focus on Kenya's Dadaab refugees, whose life at the camp is as precarious as ever, 8 years after fleeing their native Somalia. We travel to Madagascar, where mangrove trees are being decimated for their versatile wood. And we take you to South Africa, where black rhinos are being transferred to Chad as part of an ambitious repopulation project. But first, a summary of the stories that made the headlines this week. At least 44 people died after a dam burst in central Kenya, sweeping away their homes, while many of them were asleep. After a severe drought, weeks of torrential rains in Kenya have led to flooding and mudslides that have left more than 170 people dead. The private Patel Dam, used for irrigation and fish farming, burst on Wednesday evening in Soleil, near the Rift Valley town of Nakuru. More than 220,000 people have been displaced by flooding as heavy rains hit the country after 3 consecutive failed rainy seasons had left it in drought. Armed attackers struck a mosque outside the South African city of Durban on Thursday, stabbing to death an imam and injuring 2 others. 3 men entered the large mosque after midday prayers, carrying guns and attacking the victims with knives, and then releasing a petrol bomb that set fire to the building. The incident appeared to be unprecedented in South Africa, where about 1.5% of the country's 55 million population is Muslim. The World Health Organization said on Friday it was preparing for the worst-case scenario in a fresh outbreak of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The organization has tallied over 30 suspected or confirmed cases in the northwestern area of Bikoro, near the border with the Republic of Congo, including 18 deaths between April 4th and May 9th. Mozambique laid to rest rebel Supremo and opposition leader Afonso Dhlakama in his remote birth village on Thursday after his unexpected death threw the country's peace process into uncertainty. Thousands of mourners attended the funeral in the country's central Sofala province, a heartland of support for the Renamo group that he led for nearly 40 years. Dhlakama died of a suspected heart attack last week, aged 65. Mozambique's president set aside political differences to pay tribute to his arch-rival Dhlakama and pledged to continue the fragile peace talks he had been holding with the former rebel.
The premature loss of our compatriot should not be a setback for the peace process.
Sierra Leone on Saturday held its first National Cleaning Day under new President Julius Maada Bio as part of a campaign to improve hygiene and the work rate of civil servants. In the capital Freetown's largest slum, Crew Bay, hundreds of men and women sifted through tons of household rubbish and plastic waste that had been clogging the drainage system. The cleanup was announced by President Bio's office last month, 2 days after a rally in which the new leader said he would be a stickler for discipline. A statement issued by the presidency said that cleaning days will be held on the first Saturday of each month from 7 a.m. till 12 noon.
Fartoon and her 11 children live here at Kenya's Dadaab camp, one of the world's largest refugee settlements. Having fled drought and civil war in her native Somalia back in 2010, the camp brought little comfort. 2 years ago, the Kenyan government announced plans for its closure.
I heard that if we didn't leave, we'd be beaten and forced out.
An estimated 75,000 Somalis have left the Dadaab camp since 2014 as part of a so-called voluntary repatriation program with a resettlement allowance. Fartoon was one of those who reluctantly departed, but soon after crossing the border, their convoy was attacked.
On the way, we were captured and held hostage for 2 days. That's where they raped and tortured us.
To make matters worse, Kenyan authorities made it impossible for those returning to claim refugee status. And because of a shortfall in funding, she now receives a third less food than before.
The first thing that the donor picks up is, why are you having some of these ideas or requests for funds which looks long-term? And at the back of their mind, the question is, why have long-term programs when the camp will be closed very soon?
A reprieve was granted in February 2017 when Kenya's courts outlawed the closure of Dadaab. But the government has failed to publicly acknowledge the announcement, leaving refugees like Fartoon feeling as insecure as ever.
First steps in an adopted country. If everything goes well, this black rhino will play a pivotal role in reintroducing its species to Chad, where it was poached into extinction nearly 50 years ago. 2 males and 4 females were relocated from South Africa thanks to a partnership between the 2 governments.
We are thankful to South Africa, who were able to conserve its rhinos until today, and for now allowing other African countries try and do the same.
Their journey began 3 months earlier and more than 4,000 kilometers further south in the Marikele Park where the rhinos were captured. The nearly 1-ton animals are moved to another park within the country to prepare them for the 15-hour flight to Chad, under the watchful eye of several veterinarians.
That takes about 3 months to get them down to a level that you can actually touch them and they're quite comfortable with human contact. It just makes them move in the aircraft so much easier.
Despite becoming more accustomed to human interaction during the process, they remain wild animals.
Once they're out in the field, they're a rhino again. They might dissociate you, but they'll be a rhino again. They'll come charging, and they stay rhinos. It's just quite amazing.
Dying at the hands of poachers is a constant threat for Africa's 5,000 black rhinos. But NGO African Parks is confident that Chad and the Zukoma Park, where these animals are reintroduced, will be able to protect them.
We are confident enough of the political will in Chad, of our management expertise, with good funding from the European Union. We believe that we have the recipe to create a good situation for rhino to thrive once again in Chad, where they've been extinct for many decades.
After a few weeks of getting used to the different food and climate, the rhinos will be released into the wild. Over time, they will be joined by more South African rhinos with the hope of recreating a population in Chad, reminiscent of a time before poachers.
In Mami's family, once a crab fisherman, always a crab fisherman. Earning nearly €80 a month, twice the minimum wage in Madagascar, Mami has had little reason to complain about his work, until now, as a decreasing supply of crabs is threatening his livelihood.
Before, there were lots of crabs here, but now there are fewer. I think it's because of climate change. In the past, the sea was very far, but today it's coming closer and closer.
Climate change may have had an impact, but so has deforestation. For the past 5 years, Mami has been illegally cutting down mangrove trees, a habitat for crabs and fish for the wood, which is also used for construction of huts or as firewood.
During high season, it's easy to catch crabs, but during low season, it's very difficult. So you have to find another source of income. Outside the village, there are people buying mangrove wood to build houses. At the time, I used to chop the wood to sell to those people.
Here the mangrove trees have been totally decimated. The environmental consequences of this deforestation are grave.
It speeds up the erosion of the whole area because there's no more mangrove trees. It also speeds up the rising level of seawater inland because there's no barrier, since mangroves act as a barrier against erosion and strong winds like cyclones.
Mami has now stopped illegally tree cutting. Along with other villagers, he joined a reforestation program which has replanted 340 hectares of mangrove trees in the region in the last 6 years alone.
The works of Senegalese sculptor Ousmane Sow, who passed away in late 2016, went on display in his former home in Dakar, which his family turned into a museum dedicated to his body of work. Next week we travel to Egypt to profile 20-year-old Sara Samir, whose Olympic medal has propelled a female Egyptian weightlifting boom. That's all from us at Africa Weekly. Until next week.